really excited to see the progress and share more of that with you all here today.
Okay, great. Well, I'm very happy to have you all here. We have a packed presentation, and so I'll just get started.
Yeah, cool. I'll go through the beginning sort of overview very quickly, and let you guys get into your presentation and to share with the community sBTC. So, right, let's get started. So, welcome to SIP call number 38. Today is the 24th of March, and today we'll have sBTC Alpha Testnet as our main topic. Thanks to the core devs, we would love to see, like, I don't know much, to be honest. I'm just like a community member, as eager to hear about it as everybody else. So thank you for giving us your time and show us everything. For those who sort of on this call the first time, you know, whether it's from the community or from the core engineering team, on this call, we talk everything SIP related. And it could be a governance SIP like SIP 000, or it's more of a technical SIPs. And SIP essentially is just a sort of spec that's documented on GitHub about the actual features and upgrades. And for example, SIP 15 is actually Stacks 2.1 for those who don't know. So yeah, we have a lot of SIPs, and for this particular call, we're actually here to discuss together. We collaborate together, we share ideas together. If you are a SIP author, you can come and advocate for your SIP. So here is more of a neutral platform for you to get feedback and help each other develop your idea. Yeah, so just to give everybody a key summary updates of where everything are. I like to say there's a lot of early ideas, a lot of requests for comments lying around. The closest one being a SIP draft is Werner's listing microstacks trade SIP. And SIP editor's been discussing that. And congratulations to SIP 15, 20, 18. They've all been ratified. From last Sunday, I believe, or from last Monday. They were sitting activation in progress for those who didn't know, and because the block height basically reached the block height, the chosen block height, and now all the criteria has been met, all the requirements been met, therefore it goes to become ratified. Yeah, so that's sort of the top level. And it went live. Yeah, so congratulations to everybody, and shout out to all the contributors on this list, or not on this list. There's a lot of people from the core engineering team that contributed to this, or maybe from sort of the educational side as well. So thank you everybody for SIP 15 contribution, SIP 20, Bryce and Kyle. Yeah, so all this stuff went into Stacks 2.1, and also actually SIP 18 done by Marvin, assigned structured data. That's also a very important SIP, and it's been used widely. So thank you, Marvin, for all your contribution as well. And just to remind everybody what happened. So we went through the whole SIP process, involving all these different people in the actual process of reviews. So Stacks 2.1 didn't just get decided by a central authority and say, oh, we must do this. It went through the community, it went through the voting, a community-wide voting. Before the community-wide voting, all these people with their specialist skills and knowledge in the field reviewed Stacks 2.1. And that's how it got approved to the next stage to be voted by the wider community. So I just want to remind people that. And we have the steering committee too, who sort of gave the final okay. They also had to review that. So all these people contributed towards the final go ahead, I would say. So yeah, there's I'll quickly go through this. Some things I'd like the people to maybe comment or take a look. Things like SIP 11, which is really close to being a draft. I know Dan has some comments about the commissions specifically, but we can sort of hash that out maybe next week or something. Today, I would like to reserve time for sBTC. There's a lot of requests for comments. Just want to make people aware that Jude has put out a lot of posts regarding L1 or regarding the Bitcoin MVV situation happening and how we can, if we need to do something about it. And it's all up for discussion, basically. And all these posts are on Stacks forum. So please go and comment there, all this different stuff. So I just want to quickly give like 2 minutes floor to, if anybody got any comments before we go into the actual sBTC Alpha Testnet. If you got any question about the SIP itself or SIP core or anything you want to bring up.
Is this the right time to bring up my questions about SIP 11 or later?
Maybe quickly you can bring up now just to put on everybody's radar, but the actual discussion, I would say maybe in the SIP core late next week or even SIP editors call next week.
Okay, I just left a comment on SIP 11 regarding the requirement for a commission trade. It seems illogical to me that a decentralized, quote unquote, decentralized marketplace function, an NFT function, would require a commission trade. It seems in my mind that should be optional rather than requiring individual users to go out and find like a zero commission trade that might exist somewhere on the network, contract ID. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of hash that out. Thanks.
Thank you for bringing up. If anybody got any comments about that, if not, we will definitely make sure this is being discussed next week when we have the SIP editors, which Werner is on as well. We can all hash it out together.
Just one quick comment. So it's very possible that when that SIP was proposed, an optional trait wasn't available because it wasn't supported in Clarity 1. Now we can do that in Clarity 2, so it should be easy to make it an optional now. So I think that sounds totally reasonable.
Cool. Thank you so much for the feedback. Thank you, Bryce. So if nobody got any other things to bring up, to raise, I will give the floor to Igor to share with us the latest, what's going on.
Thank you. I think I'm able to share my screen. Okay, now I can. All right. Can everyone see that?
Yep. Can see it.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
I'm posting a link to these slides on the chat if you would like to follow on your own. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We would like to update the community on the progress that has been made on sBTC Alpha, and this is the work done by a great team or working group, the sBTC engineering group, which has been a pleasure of working with over the last few months. And again, here is the link to these slides. And so just to putting the call of action right up front, and I'll repeat this at the end again, but what we need from you out of the outcome of this presentation is for you to fill out the sign-up sheet so that you can receive testnet Bitcoin, so that then you can also use the sBTC Alpha Testnet. You're welcome to use a faucet, but we would like to make the process easy for you. I think we have I should have shared a published version of this. We can also, we would like for you to submit user feedback and bug reports as you start using this as well. And we invite Bitcoin builders to join us in the Bitcoin Builders Discord. The invite link here, and we also have a support channel as well. This Discord server allows us to keep focused on building sBTC. So for the agenda today, we have, I'll quickly go over the technical roadmap that we have for sBTC. I'll quickly explain what the sBTC Alpha is, and then Mike and Martin will tell us, go through some, user stories for sBTC Alpha and explain how sBTC Alpha works. I want to be clear that the purpose of this presentation was to exercise the release process, and in doing so, we identify missing components that were otherwise difficult to surface to make sBTC Alpha availability. So, we tried our best to make it available, and we found some, missing pieces. And so today this is not available, but we can. The exercise in itself was useful in identifying these pieces. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat box, and Andre will help them moderate. Thank you. So for those of you that are not familiar with sBTC, sBTC is, in short, a Bitcoin-backed asset that it's materialized on the Stacks network. Users can deposit Bitcoin into the sBTC shared wallet, and in doing so, then they receive sBTC tokens on Stacks. Users are free to do as they wish with their sBTC tokens, trade them, give them, to other people or smart contracts. And when they want to exit the system, they burn those sBTC tokens, and they receive the Bitcoin deposit back. What is the sBTC Alpha? It's an very early developer version of sBTC. It is trustless and centralized, unlike the end product, which is going to be trust minimized and decentralized. This specific instance is deployed and maintained by trust machines because it's centralized. However, any user or developer is free to fork the code and deploy their own version as well. And so in that way, the development process is decentralized. Trust Machines is planning to make 2 deployments available, one on the testnet, and the testnet's Bitcoin and Stacks networks, which will make available to everyone in the public. And we also plan to make available a mainnet deployment, and we will be using an allowed list for that, just because we want to control the amount activity in there to a close group of people. But of course, you're any user or developer is welcome to fork and deploy their own, and we encourage you to do so if the outcome of that is to bring new ideas that we could incorporate into this system. Here's a quick timeline milestones that we have. So March, we are preparing for Alpha, and then in May we're preparing for sBTC Mini, and in July we again, these are aggressive timelines, but they're more like goals, right? To have code complete and activation later in October. So sBTC Alpha here is in March. sBTC Mini, that some of you may have heard, is the next release that we plan on May. And as you can see here, we begin with a very centralized system. And as we go towards later this year, it becomes fully decentralized. And again, it starts with maximum trust, and then we minimize trust as we go. And so the remaining work that we've identified during the past few, over the past few, since last night, has been regarding some specific components that it's called a coordinator. So this is the component that mints or burns as STX tokens. The system just needs to build STX transactions, sign them, and broadcast them. And we believe that that is the missing component. And a rough estimate for completion of this, is 1 to 2 weeks. And so we expect that and to have availability for testnet and mainnet. How can you use the Alpha Testnet? So you need either a Hero wallet or Electrum. And you also need testnet Bitcoin. We worked hard to acquire testnet Bitcoin so that we can also provide you with it if you're having trouble with a faucet. And if you want to get an early look at the deployed testnet bridge, it's available here. Now, may I say that, you know, it's please do not deposit testnet Bitcoin because it might get stuck today, right? But you're free to open that today and play and just browse it. Just, you know, don't sign any transactions, and that's available. We might switch the domain name to make sure that indicate that it's a testnet, and we'll communicate that as well. If you're a developer or a builder, you are also free to fork our repository, and we should probably tell here where it is. But this will allow then for you to deploy your own alpha, and you can tweak it and then provide input. And so next we have Mike, who's going to go over some user stories for the sBTC bridge.
Great, thanks, Igor. So it's just a regular application. So this is the user-facing part of the sBTC enterprise. This is basically a way for users to be able to build transactions that either wrap Bitcoin into sBTC on the other end or unwrap it in reverse. You can skip through this. This is being built towards Hero Web Wallet at the moment, but of course, Xverse will be very high on the priority list to make this work as well. I just noticed your comment, Ken. So yeah, so we start with just regular kind of connect your wallet type interface. Two main features are wrapping and unwrapping. So we kind of see blue is the pathway to kind of convert from Bitcoin to sBTC, and yellow here is to go the other way around. And then we'll just walk through what that actually involves. So the data that's needed from the end user is pretty much here. So we need a Bitcoin address that has some Bitcoin in it. We need the account that sBTC will end up being minted to, and that can be the user's, by default it'd be the user's Stacks address that they're logged in with, but it could be a Stacks Clarity contract as well. And then there's the amount that they want to peg in. So, and then when you hit continue, so in the background, what's happened is a PSBT, a partially signed Bitcoin transaction's been created. There's various things we can do with this. You can actually show the raw transaction and copy and paste that into a Bitcoin Core wallet or into a Electrum wallet. If you hit sign and broadcast, I think, if you go to the next one. Okay, so that's the hex of the PSBT. So you can literally just paste that into your preferred wallet. So this is where we are at the moment. We've got a whole list of wallets to integrate with, which probably include Ledger and Trezor and Xverse as well. So this is kind of very hot off the press from the Hero wallet team. It's really amazing integration. So you can actually now directly pass the PSBT to them, and they'll let you sign it with your key in the web wallet. That will pass you back a signed PSBT, which in the web application we convert back into a transaction, finalize it, and then we can broadcast it. You can skip on. So that brings you to the next screen. So at this point, the transaction's been signed and broadcast. The link Bitcoin network takes you off to mempool space, and you can see this is actually one that we did earlier. We didn't want to do it live in this session, but we literally generated this a couple of hours ago. So I think the next slide shows that going. So that transaction has been signed, broadcast. Here it is on mempool space. I think the next slide shows the details of this transaction. So these are the actual outputs in the transaction. Just want to shout out to Fernando and Tycho for their work on actually creating a new way of formulating this transaction using an op-drop mechanism. So at the moment, we're kind of supporting both two ways of formulating the transaction. One that conforms with the draft SIP at the moment, which is the op return. So that string of hex data in there kind of contains some special numbers. It contains the stacks address that the Clarity contract will eventually mint that amount to. And the second output is the actual transfer to the sBTC wallet. And I think in Fernando's mechanism, those two things are combined in one clever transaction. Doesn't require an op return. At the moment, the sBTC bridge has a kind of simulator for doing mints and burns. So effectively, I've kind of set myself up as the coordinator for a test sBTC contract that I deployed on testnet a few weeks ago. And this screen is like an admin screen that I can get to, which enables me to basically do the corresponding mint and burns for the wrapping and the unwrapping processes. So this one here, I'm going to just send a mint to correspond to that peg-in that the user's just sent. So yeah, right in the middle there. And then this is the mint actually on about to go through the wallet. And then on the testnet explorer. So this is just sort of simulating the end-to-end process from the user's point of view. I'm kind of sidestepping the whole complex processes that happen in the middle of the sBTC. But that enables us to basically start building the other end of the application, which is transaction history. So what the sBTC contract, when it receives a mint or a burn request, it has a Bitcoin transaction ID, and it prints that out as an event from the contract. So what we have is a backend that takes all the events from the sBTC contract, pulls out the Bitcoin transaction ID, and then it talks to a Bitcoin RPC node and pulls out the data corresponding to that transaction. And then it passes it and just puts it into a local MongoDB database. So this way we can kind of get all the background information, pull it out and show it to the user. So we can, for example, we could show users their history of transactions, their peg-ins and peg-outs. You can kind of, this is quite sketchy at the moment, but you can click on the type of transaction and you get a drop down of the full transaction details. I don't know if you can read that, but that's it's got the kind of the stuff that's actually been broadcast onto the Bitcoin blockchain and then read back from the Stacks blockchain. Yeah, this slide just shows my Bitcoin balance, my sBTC balance has increased, I think 190. You can see it there on the right hand side. But obviously I'm just minting that to myself. So that will be a lot cooler when we've got the next piece in play. Yeah, and then the other main feature is unwrapping, slightly more complex than wrapping into the sBTC. So unwrapping, basically what you're doing is sending a dust amount of Bitcoin to the sBTC wallet to tie that transaction together. And then you're sending some data that's really like intended to be interpreted on the Stacks blockchain. So in Clarity. So if you skip on to the next slide, you'll see that what we do is we take the input information and the user basically signs that, and they create a signature that basically says they're authorizing this burn event. So this is ultimately going to burn their sBTC and get their BTC back into their wallet. And to do that, they basically sign this so that we know they've consented to this. Again, we come back, and now what we're going to do is put the that signature into the output of the Bitcoin transaction, and then broadcast that. So again, we just integrate with the Hero web wallet with the sBT signing function. And that will give us the signed, that will sign the inputs for us for this BTC address. And now, same process. I think that's the last slide I had. We just show the details of that. So if you click on Bitcoin network, it takes you to mempool space, and again you can see the insides. And again, this can be done with the op drop or op return to wrap up the data.
Amazing stuff. And I guess some people might be wondering what happens behind the scenes when you're clicking through all of these things. So I'm going to do a quick run through of what happens when you peg in and peg out, or wrap and unwrap is the new words that I'm just learning. So for all intents and purposes here, peg out and peg in is the same as wrapping and unwrapping, as you just saw. This is what the transactions currently are called and what they're called in the SIP. So if you are a BTC holder, you only essentially need to be concerned with the Bitcoin node, or I mean, this is still abstracted away for you, but there are two other entities, the Stacks coordinator and the Stacks node, that will sort of participate in this whole dance of converting BTC and sBTC back and forth. So first of all, you will send a peg-in transaction to the Bitcoin node. This is what you do when you wrap. So Igor, please advance the slide. And what's going to happen, so this is how we implement this for Alpha. This is going to be different in the finalized version, but in Alpha, we essentially have an entity Stacks coordinator. I will go through a bit about that at the end. But from this perspective, you can see that as the sort of centralized trusted entity. The coordinator will look at the Bitcoin node. It will poll for any sBTC ops. That's the next slide. And if the coordinator happens to find any peg-in operations, the coordinator has authority to materialize sBTC directly on the Stacks node. Thank you, Igor. And that's essentially it for wrapping BTC. Now you are holding sBTC, and you can do fun stuff with that. You can do smart contracts and all the beautiful things. But all good things have an end, and after a while, you want to get back your Bitcoin from your sBTC. So how do you do that? So it's very similar. Yes, you submit a peg out request. Stacks coordinator will do the same thing. It will poll for sBTC ops. It will see a request to peg out some BTC. Will of course validate that. If things look good, it is again authorized to burn sBTC. So it will talk to Stacks node, burn the sBTC, to finally go back to the Bitcoin node and submit a peg out fulfillment transaction. And this transaction is the transaction that will give you back your funds in BTC. So as you can see here, sBTC Alpha revolves a lot around this Stacks coordinator. So I'm going to say a few words about it, and some of it you've probably already derived. So if you can advance the slide, please, Igor. So the coordinator is essentially only capable of doing two things, except for observing the state and interfacing with the nodes. So the coordinator has a special role in the sBTC contract, the fungible token that we have for Alpha. And the coordinator is the only one who's able to mint and burn sBTC. It's an authority on that end. And the second thing that the coordinator can do is fulfill peg out requests on so unwrapping sBTC to Bitcoin on the Bitcoin chain. And to do that, it needs to sign and maintain a wallet on the Bitcoin chain. And this wallet, it's a bit more decentralized. It's not really important for the purposes of sBTC Alpha because it could maintain its own keys. But to simulate the final sBTC version, we're running a set of many stackers who will aggregate the signatures together. So not one person will hold the keys to all the Bitcoin that will live on sBTC Alpha. And that's a good thing as well. That was the things I wanted to talk. I hope that shed some light on what happens on the chain. Igor, do you want to take over?
Yes, thank you, Martin. That was very great, very great. And thank you, Mike, for that those slides. That was very easy to follow, at least for me. And so I'd like to close with explaining what's ahead for us. So we are finishing the last pieces remaining that we've identified this week to make available testnet and mainnet versions of sBTC Alpha. And we are also planning to start discussions around the SIP that will eventually be needed to be ratified, right? To pass to enable sBTC. And so we would like folks to start thinking about what is needed from the Stacks improvement proposal for us to get this started. And again, I want to remind you what we would like from you. First, we'd like to for you to use this sign-up sheet that will ask you for your email, and I'll paste this here for a Bitcoin testnet address so that we can airdrop you some testnet Bitcoin, and as well as you can use when we have availability, or even today, you can fiddle around with the front end, and the link is in the presentation. You can provide user feedback on the front end, and if you are a builder, for instance, Xverse, if you want to integrate with us, come to our Discord, and we'll love to integrate with you. And we also have a user support channel that was just created this morning to have more interactive user support. And with that, I would like to close and open up for discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
So first point, there's a person, Kaylee, who doesn't have access to the sign up. So we need to open it up.
Okay, great. That was just created.
Yeah, it was created earlier.
Let me work on that real quick.
And really happy to see that people are trying to access the sign up.
Yeah. Any other questions? Andrew, do you want to moderate while I fix this?
Sure, I will try to see what happens in the. Or did you ask Andrew or me? Yeah, I'm taking the floor. So, yeah, here we give a question about recordings. So while I'm reading the chat, anyone can just shout out any question. I think we can have an open discussion until it's chaotic, and I will start to moderate. There was a question about spending sBTC within Stacks network and what happens during peg out, and I answered that in the chat already. sBTC is a fungible token. You can spend it and play around with smart contracts and everything that you can do with any fungible token. And when you peg out, the coordinator will validate the amount of sBTC you hold, and it will burn the amount that you have requested. So you don't have to peg out everything. You can request to peg out, I don't know, a smaller amount. And as long as you hold that amount on the Stacks blockchain, the peg out request will be fulfilled. There's, of course, a lot of details to this, to the finalized version, because the Stacks blockchain can work independently. Cool. Yeah, your peg out request is limited to your sBTC, and whoever received the sBTC can peg out on their own. Yes, that's true. So you can send sBTC to your best friend can send your sBTC to your enemy, and your enemy can peg out your sBTC for BTC, and then your friends again. And everybody's happy in the end. Cool. Can anyone see if I missed any question? I'm not the best at scrolling Zoom.
Is everyone able to unmute, or do they have to put their hands up? I don't know.
If anybody can't unmute, can you speak up?
If anybody got question, just unmute.
Otherwise, I'll highlight in the chat, Fernando is very clever. I can vouch for that.
I've got a question. So I saw on the what happens next is sBTC on mainnet in 1 or 2 weeks. Does that mean we could be seeing some sBTC pegged from real Bitcoin on Stack's mainnet kicking around?
So when sBTC will launch on mainnet, we will definitely be able to see some real Bitcoin being pegged in.
Yeah.
The sBTC on mainnet is going to be a closed alpha because we don't want to, in the event that a lot of people are pegging in, we don't want to have centralized control of such a high amount of Bitcoin. But once that hits alpha, once alpha hits mainnet, we definitely hope to see some activity there.
Yeah, and I want to add that this will be an sBTC token. However, it will not be backed by a trust minimized, decentralized set of stackers.
Yeah.
And then two, later iterations such as mini or the final sBTC product will technically be different tokens. So at least for the alpha, we'll definitely put limits on the mainnet as to how much the shared wallet can grow to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So really, even though this is mainnet, it's really a developer-focused release. So we'll have likely strict guardrails on how much people can actually mint for the sBTC, leading up until the actual production launch, later this year.
Exactly, that's a very good addition.
So if I think of it, if I just trying to analogize it for the rest of the people, could we think of it a little bit more like a centralized custodian version, a little bit like the XBTC, equivalent on the mainnet?
Yeah, sBTC Alpha is more centralized than XBTC, but yes, the next iteration will actually, mini will be expected to be more decentralized, I think, than XBTC, but Alpha is more centralized than XBTC.
Cool. So we have a question about the remaining work for sBTC Alpha, if we can elaborate more. And I'm happy to have that question. We actually condensed down the slide to not go down into too many technical details on that. But so as you know, the coordinator is sort of a very central component for sBTC Alpha, and that one needs to integrate a lot with both Bitcoin and sBTC. It needs to be able to create sBTC or Stacks transactions, broadcast them to nodes. For anyone interested in all of the details, I can share our project board. That might be too much detail for some, but on a medium high level, I would say we're finalizing the work on signing Bitcoin transactions right now. The other pieces that are remaining, and Igor, please fill me in because I'm not going to remember everything by heart. But yeah, Bitcoin transactions and then controlling the sBTC contract, which requires a JavaScript interaction, which I think Sergey has finalized, but the actual contract calls needs to be updated. Once those transactions are constructed, we already have the integration with the Stacks node. So it's essentially node integration between. So one thing is node integration between the coordinator and the Stacks node. Talking to the sBTC contracts. And another side is the Bitcoin transaction and UTXO management needs to be updated because the payout request, we don't have the full payout fulfillment construction done yet. So I think those are the main pieces on the Stacks coordinator. I might forget something. And once the Stacks coordinator is in place, it's more DevOps, like deploying things, figuring out bugs, tying the remaining knots.
If we wanna use the diagram here, these are the missing components. The burn sBTC.
I think
and then
materialize
materialize
sBTC and burn sBTC is essentially one box. Like that's the same thing. If we can materialize sBTC, we can burn it. It's a
From an
contract
engineer's
call.
perspective.
And then we have the takeout fulfillment transaction,
Yeah.
so that Stacks coordinator can actually construct and sign a Bitcoin transaction, which Joe and Don has done
And yeah,
really good work
and
on, but there's some remaining pieces before that's fully functional.
this
One internal piece of that is UTXO management.
this box on the left was
Yeah.
the biggest blocker we had, which took a considerable amount of effort.
Well, it's still not
to
finished.
do.
So yes.
Yes,
it
took
is a
and
big
then the
block.
blue is what is missing, but the
Mm.
red took outsized amount of effort.
Yeah.
Into the
And
team.
it's still work to be done on that. Cool. I hope that sheds some more light.
Rafa,
I'm gonna share the project board as well, and I have the link right here. So sending that, and we got another question. I joined late and also want to be able to read about this, rewatch this, testing our assumptions using sBTC versus DLC for the covered call.
to give a little bit context, we've got Albert running Web3 Startup Labs. He's bringing a lot of builders like at experimental phase of developing their new apps, and a lot of them are probably gonna use sBTC as part of their idea or project focus. So I believe Rafa is probably asking from that perspective. So it would be great for you to speak to those, coming Stacks builders. Like, can they start testing it in 1 or 2 weeks?
That is our goal. We'll try our best to make that happen. And if you use the sign up sheet that I've posted in the chat that I've opened now, we'll add you to a mailing list, and you'll be the first to know when it is available.
He said about, can I test the trust assumptions for DLC?
Not sure what about the question.
Scroll up a little bit. I think he wants to use as DLC on sBTC to do finance.
It sounds like he's trying to figure out where, like in his use case, it makes sense to use a DLC versus sBTC. This is actually something we've had some conversation about in the go-to-market meeting. I know Igor and Tico have been involved in part of that discussion. Also, Rafa, I know there's a forum post about this where if you wanted to maybe add your perspective about what you're sort of observing through the two use cases, we'd love to hear your feedback on that. I can link it to you in the chat here.
So it's essentially using sBTC versus Bitcoin native plus DLC, is that right?
Exactly. Like maybe there are some use cases where it makes sense to use sBTC versus DLCs, and just, it's really up to his use case to figure out, where that is differentiated.
Who would be the target people that you want doing this testnet?
So at this point, is the testnet deployment would be, definitely people in this call, because due to the interest, and especially builders, folks that want to build on this, but also developers that perhaps want to try out different integrations. So for instance, I saw some questions about DLC. If you have ways of how to integrate a DLC and you're a builder, you can fork the code and you can hack on top of it and deploy your own sBTC alpha, and then that way you can influence the development of that feature, right? And then Corange team could then ingest those ideas. But primarily it'll be community members that are willing to and excited to try out things that could be broken at the beginning, and that also are excited to provide us with feedback on how to improve the product, because this is still quite broken, and we're quickly iterating on the feedback.
And I presume like people want from like Alex, NeoSwap, the existing already launched apps would be part of the target audience for this testnet. Is that right?
Yes. So we've identified definitely trust machine core engineers, Hero core engineers, Foundation core engineers, and definitely folks like Xverse, NeoSwap, right? And I don't want to leave anyone out, but these are just folks that I know, and if I don't know you, like, reach out to me. But definitely startup labs, startup ventures, stacking pool operators like Freeger or Plan Better, definitely Gamma, Alex, and the list keeps on going. But if I didn't name you, then reach out to me and show yourself.
Hero, is there any context that would be helpful for maybe this group to add about the SIP process? So we have SIP 21 that details a lot of this. I believe that's in the process of being updated with some of our latest thinking. But just wondering, if there's anything that we should note for going through the SIP process with this.
I think it's just keeping community informed at different stages, as and when appropriate. Like now, I think it's great because I guess what we would like to avoid is sort of loaded everything to the back end when the community is sort of informed, the greater community informed at the last stage without hearing or seeing all the great work that you're doing sort of behind the curtains. Because I know a lot of conversation can be very GitHub centric, which is, a great place for the developers. But when it's globally impact, with high impact, it's not just like a SIP that has sort of say recently, SIP editors started sort of putting down a percentage. Any given SIP affects the whole total network. Some SIP maybe less percentage, like 80%. If it's just a marketplace listing trade, maybe it's 80%. But a SIP like this is basically 100%. Impacts everyone on the network. So with high impact like this, we just like to offer people the opportunity to have their say and just to be informed and educated, to be honest, because people need to, in order to really give good feedback on the SIP itself, people also need to be aware of the pros and cons, whether this sBTC touches the collateralization issue or not. The more people can be aware of what they're opting in some ways when they're voting on, would be great. I mean, even the bid process doesn't inform everybody about Taproot very well in some ways, like some can argue. So I guess what we would like to do is to try and make the process as transparent, as informative and educational throughout the process as possible when it comes to a globally impact SIP. So that's what I will probably say. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, that was super helpful. Like, communicate early and often so the community is aware of some of all of the progress leading up to it, and should help to make it a smooth process overall.
Yeah, I mean, we only started having the SIP call sort of since last July or August sort of ish. So I would say this process is sort of still new, but every week there's opportunity for people to come on and share stuff. But also we have now and also other SIP editors now helping to educate people sort of publicly on Twitter Space bi-weekly. We have a SIP editors meeting, and we will talk through things like this too. So I think there are just more and more sort of support system now in place for these kind of globally impacting SIPs to be more aware by the community. So I guess leveraging what we currently have, the support system, which I'm continuing to build out so that it becomes a very like everybody, if they want to listen to something, if they want to join the conversation, they can, and they know where to go.
Yeah, and Hiro, I assume that we would need to have some sort of community vote on this, right? Since this is a breaking change. So, if we're, let's say we're planning to, activate in production end of Q3, beginning of Q4, when would we need to have that vote? Is there like a best practice for that?
I think basically it would be Q3, Q2. We need to start making the website, which Mike built the last website. So I think we'll start like educating on the community for sure. Q2. The vote probably happened Q3, I would imagine. But the vote can take like a month. I think it's 2 stacking cycles. That was what we did last time. It doesn't mean we have to do 2 stacking cycle this time, but I would imagine would be something similar. And then you have a month of, say, getting the miners to upgrade. So it could take from vote 2 months plus, I would say. And preparing the website takes some time. Putting the content together about what it's about on a blog or on a voting website takes some time. So yeah, we will need to vote. We need to prepare the vote. But I think another vote might potentially happen, the MEV one, if people want to do half fork. But I don't know the details about that. It's really still up for debate. Yeah, the co-engineer.
Okay, that's helpful. And so Igor, we might want to add this to the table that you have with all the milestones. It sounds like based on the timeline that Hiro walked through, we might want to plan for it to be early July, roughly, which means that we would probably start making the website and more like formal community education, maybe a month or 2 ahead of that, sometime in Q2. But that should give us plenty of time if we have that, roughly in line when code completion happens for us to be ready to activate.
Yeah, that sounds right, Andre. And we can keep working with you on the timeline on this. I really recommend starting super early on community education stuff. I know that there are probably some things that are still up in the air, but as soon as Q2 comes around, I think that's when we should start an educational campaign. This is a good place to raise any early concerns or big questions that community members aren't so sure about. Because the biggest thing with voting is that binary votes are helpful, but the feedback that we got on the 2.1 vote last quarter was that community members wanted to be able to vote in a way or give feedback in a way that was like not just yes or no, but yes, but or no and, right? So being able to give more nuanced feedback. So we want to have a lot of time, ideally most of next quarter for that kind of discussion, so that when the vote does come around, it's not a huge surprise to everyone what the results are.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, if anybody I think we're coming to the top of the hour, so I'll just quickly close by, we are having a SIP editors workshop right now. Probably stay on this call for, I think is, yeah. So if anybody is interested to become a SIP editor or contribute towards the beginning part of the SIP process, the first stage is SIP editors, the second stage is the CAPs, the third stage is the steering committee, and we're trying to make sure the first stage is well solid. We're having a workshop right now with Raphael. If you guys are interested, you can just stay on the call. Yeah, so thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, the code devs for coming to share everything you guys are doing behind the scene. Great stuff.
Thank you for letting us share.